remember watching a romance movie once. It was on the Hallmark Channel, and I used to watch those movies all the time before the owners of the channel sold out to the cultural ideology on love. But even before that, all the movies were the same. As a matter of fact, my grandson used to love sleeping over, and he was about 9 years old, and he said, Grandma, can I sleep over? We can watch one of your movies. And I was watching Hallmark, and he goes, that's the channel where the guy always starts out with one, or the girl always starts out with one guy and ends up with the poor guy and not the rich guy, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, they are so predictable. It was so funny. But he and I used to snuggle and just watch these movies. And in a particular movie, I remember the daughter was trying to decide, oh, mother, what do I do? Stay with the rich guy from New York, or who can give me so many material things, or as all the Hallmark movies were, go to the guy who is still good looking, but he lives in the country and he's more homey and he can't offer you anything material but love. And the mom said to him, follow your heart, honey. Follow your heart. Now, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I would have probably gone, oh, yes, yes, follow your heart. But the new Christine, the one who's done all the research, done just really digging deep into my faith in Christ and the church and the Bible, and I realized, no, no, you do not follow your heart. Even when it comes to romance decisions, of course, there has to be compatibility. But following your heart is not a good way to make a decision, even a romance decision. Because if that were good, I wouldn't have so many clients trying to come to me and fix their marriages, fix their relationships. Why? They got married because they followed their hearts. They did it based on feelings. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't get married based on feelings, but we should do a whole lot more than that. We should use logic as well. And when we get married and often use our feelings change. You loved someone once, but now you hate them, but you can love them again, because I've seen that. People got married, got divorced, got remarried. I've seen some get separated twice, remarried, and then they lived happily ever after. Well, what happened? The heart. If we look at the Bible, and I always have to pull it up because when I try, even these short verses, I always mess something up. So Jeremiah 17, verse 9 says, more torturous than anything is the human heart, beyond remedy. Who can understand it? I read in a different version of the Bible that says how more deceitful than anything is the human heart. And I was like, that is really true. Our hearts can and do lie to us all the time. I talk about my precious grandson again. I just spent some time with him on vacation, and he was a little punk, and I love him. But as a teenager, he's so loving in front of me, but when he's around his friends, he's, a little bit more cocky. And I remember thinking, you're driving me nuts. So, but my logic says this is the loving grandson, and it's because he's with his friends. But his own heart was, I'm afraid of what people think. So, what about you? How do you make your decisions? And this isn't just your romantic decisions. I think about a friend I had years ago, and she used to say, I was abused by my mother. I was so abused. She was so abusive. And she had two other siblings, and the other two siblings said, Mom wasn't abusive. Mom spanked us. That wasn't abuse. Now, I wasn't there in their childhood, but I was looking at three Catholics who went to church, and they weren't deceitful people. Of course, they all had their different views on life, but their perspectives were so different. Even the one who said we weren't abused, we were spanked. It wasn't like she was saying, oh yeah, you were abused, but I wasn't. She was saying, no, you're seeing this differently. And I've heard stories and I knew the mother. And the mother was a great devout Catholic, I used to go to that person's house. And Spend time with all of them. Not that abusers don't spend time with their children. But the point of it was the way that this woman perceived it, her heart, she was much more sensitive than her other siblings. I get that. But because she was so much more sensitive, she perceived any criticisms as abusive. So what do? We have got to default to logic. We have got to use our reason in making our decisions. Go into the profession I have. How many people say, I was abused by my spouse? Oh, were you? And some, maybe they were. But most of the time, what I get is, what happened? And I'll hear the typical, well, we were arguing and then it got loud and then I was like in his face and then I, like pushed his chest and I swear I just touched his chest with a finger and he grabbed my wrists, to try to stop her. And then he pushed and I lost my balance and I fell into the wall and that's abusive. Okay, so that's one version of the many things I hear. It's always the one person instigating and the other person trying his hardest not to touch a woman. And then, ultimately defending himself, get off me, right? Now, I'm not here to talk about each individual situation. I'm here to talk about the principle of this video, which is how we make a decision. Was it abuse? Was it not? Are you being deceived? Is your heart deceitful? Because right now you do not like your spouse, so you're going to see everything he or she does in a negative way. So I even had one person say to me, "Oh, I'm going to tell you what my spouse did. Was that abuse? That was abuse, right? Right? Once you're sitting there trying to get approval of someone else. Oh, okay, good. Thanks for telling me that's abuse. Look, if it's real abuse, you don't need anyone's verification. If they punch you or hurt you or do harsh things to you, that's abuse. But actually, I always explain to people abuse is power and control. I don't want to make this video about abuse, but what I'm making this video about is using logic. So when people will explain to me, well, he did this or he did that, I'm like, well, that was mean, or he or she said this really nasty thing. And I'll say, that was mean, that was nasty, but that wasn't abuse. There's a difference between being mean and being abusive. So they had to use their logic, which a lot of prodigals don't want to hear this because they want you just to agree with their feelings. We look at these people right now who I identify as something they're not. They identify as a gender that they're not. My heart breaks for them, first of all, because they are our brothers and sisters and they are obviously struggling. The average person doesn't just wake up and go, I want to be the other gender. It's not some kind of plaything. Their hearts are broken. They had some kind of injury in their heart, in their mind. And so this idea of identifying as something that they're not is something I always take people back to the logic. I always help them and I gently walk them through. Tell me the first time you felt this way. We go by feelings, and then we go back to the logic. But are you this and are you that? And can you do this and can you do that? And most of the time, even my persons who identify as trans, they say, well, I know I'll never really be a woman. I know I'm a man, but I just feel more confident when I'm dressed as a woman. Okay. See, that was someone using their logic and not just their heart. Jeremiah was right. The heart is deceitful, but you've got to use the mind that God gave you as well. And I want to alert you too on like definitions when you're looking it up. Okay, I'm logically going to look. Don't look at a modern dictionary. Modern dictionaries have been hijacked. They're changed daily. They are now changing words in dictionaries to match what they want it to match instead of what it's always been held as. That's why I go back to old dictionaries. If you have an encyclopedia set from your childhood, keep it. Keep it. Because it was before, for the most part, language definitions were being altered so ravenously. And you can look at that and in the privacy of your own mind, just ask yourself with the logic, Is this really true, or is this just how I feel? Because there were times I hated my husband. I felt like I didn't want to be married to him. That was my heart, but my logic knew that if I loved him once, I could love him again. I hated knowing that on those days that I wanted to get rid of him. But I knew logically that it was the best thing for my kids. I knew logically that if I loved him once, even though I hated him or disliked him, or that I could love him again. So I had to humble myself and intellectually work towards that end. And I work with other people to do the same thing, and I can work with you. Look me up. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for watching another informational Bacon Bit. And as always, I want to remind you to live your life sunny side up.